go, and as we know, when you go all in on something, everyone around you starts believing it. When you're like half-assed, you're like, I don't know this. No, you have to go absolutely all in on your goals for everyone else around you to start believing in that. And that's what happened to me.
Well, welcome everyone to another fine edition of the Making Waves Mindset Show.
This is us. We are in a new environment today.
We are.
This is different for us, a bit different in person. We've done a couple in-persons, but we now have the pleasure of being in the Perception Studio.
We do. And we're very thankful for that. It's an incredible experience so far, incredible hospitality as well.
Yes.
The Making Waves Mindset Show, for those of you who are new, this is the place where you come to discuss the entrepreneurial spirits, the mindset and the energy of what it's like to leave the 9 to 5. Maybe you're considering going away from the 9 to 5 and you have questions. And we've been able to share our journey from what Dave and I have done. Things aren't perfect. There's a lot that we have to learn. And when you make that transition, there's downhills. So we want to talk about those, unlike social media where it's always, here's my Ferrari, right? But this is the place where you can come. So we're very thankful for you to be on the show and to follow our journey along with our amazing guest today.
Yeah. So just to jump in, if you haven't subscribed to our channel, please do so. Hit that subscribe button and follow us along. You can follow us on YouTube or any of the podcast channels. And make sure you follow. If you are not following the show, watch an episode, listen to an episode, share it. If you don't like it, share it anyways, because there's going to be some people out there who enjoy it or want to hear this. So I'm not going to take away any of his chime and his charm, but we have Anthony Ricciardi in our studio today, and we are pleased to have him. I will let him tell his story. I will definitely not do it justice. So
thanks for coming,
Thanks
Anthony.
for coming. Thanks for being here.
I'm extremely grateful to be here. Thank you guys so much. This is awesome. And yeah, this is a beautiful studio, so very grateful that we're here.
Wonderful.
But yeah, I'm Anthony Ricciardi. I'm a Toronto-born artist. I'm a creative, but ultimately, I believe in myself as an entrepreneur. Growing up, no one said become an artist. It was a viable career. So my whole entire life, I did many different things that sort of steered me around, and different things that I loved and different things I had passions for. But art never really seemed as a realistic thing. So my passions took me all over. I played Division I baseball in the U.S. I had a passion for baseball, so I ended up going to play baseball in the U.S. for Alabama State University.
Wow.
And then I studied finance because, again, art wasn't real. So for me, it was always I had a great family and great, guidance throughout my whole entire life. It was like, do the right thing, do the safe thing, take the proper steps.
Of course, yeah.
Go to school, get a job, rinse and repeat.
Get a job.
Get a pension.
Proper steps for what? For security, right? And that's what it is.
But what the truth is, it's actually not even security for yourselves. It's actually security. What I've learned now, years later, is that when our loved ones tell us to, get that safe job, all they're doing, and I don't mean this in a mean way, but all they're doing is telling themselves at night that I gave Anthony the best societal norm advice.
Right.
And they can go to bed happy with that.
Right.
It didn't mean it was the best for Anthony, because ultimately it wasn't, or it didn't mean it was best for anyone, right? But when I tell my son, or whatever it may be, hey, do this because this is society. This is even. This is okay. I'm actually saying that for myself.
Yeah.
It may not be best for the child, and I very not quickly, but eventually learned this, and I was like, well, let me just try. What's the worst case scenario?
Mm-hmm.
Why don't I just try? So that was the transition after 5-6 years in finance, just over 5 years. I was like, well, let me try this thing called art. And I was already doing it every night and weekend. And I was finally like, you know what, let me make this transition. And here we are today.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's incredible to have a paradigm shift like that, where something hits and you're like, I want to give that a try. We have many guests who come on the show where, like you say, it's their family upbringing. It's what the family knows. And they want to give you that comforting advice because it worked for them.
Yeah.
But you took a bold step and go, I'm going to try that art thing out. I'm going to give it a whirl.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it was actually really difficult to transition because my uncle was an artist. My uncle was my dad's brother, one of my biggest inspirations. But transparently, throughout his whole entire life, he struggled with art. So that old coined term. I'm sure you guys know it as starving artist.
Yes.
They don't say
Yes.
starving dentist.
Yes.
They don't say starving. They don't even say starving barista. They say starving
It
artist.
should
Yeah.
be starving entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
That's what it should be. It should
It's
be.
true.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there was this coin term. I grew up with it and I saw it firsthand. And unfortunately, when I was in university, my uncle passes away. And when I came home, I got all of his old. He was a poet as well. He's an incredible
wow.
poet and artist. I got all of his old poetry, his art, and it re-inspired me. So it's sort of like looking back on it was me becoming an artist eventually was sort of him speaking through me. I believe,
Yeah.
and it was a way to like let's try this thing. But yeah, that was another reason why it didn't seem realistic, because like I had the person I looked to the most,
Right.
outside of my parents was like, it's probably not realistic.
What was he doing
I mean, he was
other than art? Like,
yeah, like I just odd jobs,
Odd jobs,
just
yeah.
job. Like he was a bartender and like he had a
Right.
bunch of different things. He was just a great person in society, but just had a bunch of jobs. Like he was a sales rep and like I
feel like
but
that's
he
what
was
most
he
artists
was a
do.
creative and an entrepreneur. Like he had different patents for projects that he was creating. He created like these systems for like bartenders, like all this really really cool stuff.
Yeah.
Wow.
Just never fully got to see it through, but he was like a true entrepreneur and a creative. So it looking back, it was definitely the formative, and so was my dad. Like my dad's very entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
But they both had sales jobs. They both had like structured careers. But like the root of them was, and I think that I just took it to the next level.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair enough. I want to jump back to baseball.
Yeah.
How did you set yourself up to get into baseball? Was it just something you really enjoyed and you decided to go down that route, and then transition from that to finance?
For sure. Yeah, 3 different walks of life.
Yeah.
Sports, finance, and art. Like
Yeah, yeah.
very, very separate things. Baseball, I just loved growing up. I played every sport growing up. I played soccer, hockey, and baseball, all at a decent level. Baseball was just my passion. It wasn't necessarily like my dad always jokes that like I was probably better in soccer and hockey growing up. And my size isn't the most ideal for baseball, especially in like, 10, 15 years ago. There wasn't many smaller guys and I was a pitcher. So definitely on the pitching mound, there's not many small pitchers, and I'm not that small, but in the baseball world, I am.
Right. Yeah.
And,
Pitchers are generally
pitchers
tall.
are huge. They're big, right?
Yeah.
You got to get close to the plate. Your drive, your torque, everything comes from your size. And so again, growing up, baseball didn't even seem realistic,
Yeah.
right? It was like I was gonna have an uphill battle my whole entire time, but I had this idea where I was like, I want to play Division I baseball. It was like the highest level underneath the major leagues, and I was like, how can I get there? No one was recruiting me. I'm in
Mhm.
Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
I played for some of the top teams in Canada. I was still, a very well, rounded player in Canada, but no one's coming to recruit me.
Yeah.
Right.
No one's like calling me, hey, like we want this kid. If I want to go play down south and I'm here in Toronto, there's a lot of good players in between me and down south or wherever
Right.
it is I was gonna go. So I thought of this idea. I was like, let me email, and this is like one of the first entrepreneurial creative things I did.
Wow.
I was like, let me email all 306 Division I schools
Wow.
and just
Wow.
and see what happens. So I made like this is over 10 years ago. I was like, this is 14 years ago. Let me make my own website. Let me make this email campaign. All this stuff like who was even thinking of it? I don't even know how I thought of it. Honestly, I don't. Looking back, I was like, why did I do this? And I sent it out to all 306 schools, and to my surprise, nobody responded. Zero. I
Okay.
got a couple like people said like, please take us off your mailing list.
No.
I was like, oh, God. I'm like, I don't know what to do. So then I said, well, this is like the first time creativity and like entrepreneurship really played a role in my life, where I was like, well, instead of like just doing this broad thing, like I want to go to any school, I'm like, I only need one. So I narrowed it down to like 50 schools, and I got like extremely granular in the approach. And I was like, well, what from these schools do I like? Like
Mhm.
if a coach did read this, they need to know that I'm like obsessed with this school and I
Right.
know everything about it. And that's what I did. I narrowed down to 50, and like 4 or 5 responded, which was just amazing. Because again, I only needed one to get
Yeah.
that snowball going. And from there, I went down to a couple camps and tryouts and stuff like that. And I was in Valdosta, Georgia, and a coach walks by and he's like, "Hey, son, I recognize you from somewhere."
Son.
And I'm like, "Yeah," with a very southern accent.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Good to hear.
And he goes, I'm like, "I recognize you." And I go, "You're the coach of Alabama State University." I go, "I sent you 22 emails over the last 6 months." He's like, "Yes, you're very resilient." And I'm like, "Thank you." So, and then 2 weeks later, I was in Montgomery, Alabama on a baseball scholarship. So then I went down,
Wow.
and then I played it in Alabama for about 4 years. And I went back to coach for a semester. And then but in baseball was great. I ended up, from that, I ended up I was a pitcher of the year. I was an all conference pitcher. I was a starter. So it was a great experience. And then I got a little bit injured. I didn't really have many opportunities outside of baseball after that. And I had a couple opportunities to play overseas in Europe and all around. And I had a couple friends that went to Australia, to Austria, to Italy to play.
Wow.
And I was like, I have these same opportunities, but I was also like, I just graduated a degree in finance.
Right.
And that was the second transition where I was like, well, I've been with my wife now, but we've been together since high school.
Okay.
And it was also like, I want to get home. I've been living in Montgomery, Alabama. I want to get home and potentially start this life.
Yeah.
And so then that's when I graduated and came home to
Were you
start
the
to work.
only Italian in Montgomery, Alabama?
There was one other. It was a girl who played on the soccer team. So yeah, she was from Hamilton.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But
Jeez.
yes, there was not many.
Yeah.
I was the first Canadian baseball player ever to go to Alabama State.
Wow.
Which is cool. There was a couple golfers, couple track runners, and a couple soccer players, but
Yeah.
I was the first baseball player, which is funny.
What do you think was the biggest lesson you learned out of that transition
Into baseball or out of baseball?
into baseball?
Into baseball.
Yeah.
It was that, focused resiliency can get you somewhere.
Right.
Like I had one singular goal, especially when I'm looking back then, like how simple life is.
Of course.
Anytime we look back 5 years, 3 years, you're like, oh man, times are simpler then. But when you're in it, it feels horrible.
Right.
Like I can just rewind 3 years from today.
Yeah.
Never mind 15 years. Like 3 years from today, I'm like, wow, my life was a lot simpler then.
Right.
And then you when you keep doing that and you actually look back and take those lessons, you're like, wow, like if we just take the lessons that how we got to today, which is being resilient,
Mhm.
never giving up,
Mhm.
trying everything that you physically can and focusing on one thing, we can truly get to anywhere in life. So
Mhm.
that was like the biggest lesson that I learned from that, like many, many years ago, was like, I had one goal, get to school.
Yeah.
Like just get it. I didn't apply anywhere in Canada. I was like, I'm playing Division I baseball. And it was one singular goal, focused on it, and gave myself enough time. And enough time is all relative to the human. Like that can
Mhm.
mean 1 month, could mean 6 months, could mean 6 years.
Right.
Right. And that's a big thing for entrepreneurs to understand that
Yeah. Yeah.
nothing happens right away, as you guys know.
It's huge. And I
Slow
think
moving.
it's slow moving, and that's one of the biggest, feedback points we hear from the guests is it's very slow moving. And you and I have shared the downs
Oh
and the
my gosh,
slowing.
yeah.
It's like right now I'm going through something. It's crazy. Should
Yeah.
have been opened a year ago. I'm not. I'm opening a business in the US in Florida.
Oh, nice.
And it's just one thing after the other, but it's that resiliency. It's the motivation to push yourself to continue to go, because people would give up.
Yes.
And I think that's the biggest
Well,
thing.
people do.
We live in this instant society now where it's quick. I want it now, but what's your plan? Put
Yeah.
it together. Look at the downhill valleys in between, but realize those valleys are actually going up.
Yeah.
So
Even if it's just 0.5% better every day and
Right.
moving
One-
towards your goal, like people don't understand the ups and downs of entrepreneurship truly. Because everything always is good on the outside.
Yeah.
And even I'm a very, very positive person. I genuinely believe everything's always going to work out.
Mhm.
And that's against what's the truth. Like that's against the reality.
Yes.
But I'm convinced myself, even in the worst times,
what's the life
nothing-
lesson? What are you learning from it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Nothing
Yeah.
could be working and everything's against you.
Yeah.
And like you got clients that owed you money. You got this going here. This project's not working through. And you're like, wait, how am I going to get through the next month? Whatever it may
Right.
be. You're like, well, no, the vision's bigger than this.
Yeah.
Like, I know it's not right now. This isn't what it's about. It's about 2 months, 2 years, 6 years. Like
Mhm.
there's got to be a little bit of a vision. That's where, and people do give up. Like
Yeah.
it's not easy, right? It's not
Well,
for
One of the things that I've been doing lately is every time I get frustrated in business, or every time I get frustrated to a point where I'm just like, why am I doing this?
Mhm.
I try to recalibrate myself, look back to where I was, to where I am, and try to enjoy the moments and realize, why did I end up doing this to begin with?
yes.
Was for my happiness, for my personal happiness. If you don't realize your personal happiness and why you did it, that's when people give up.
For sure.
That's
There's a-
when people are like, fuck this. I'm out of here.
Yeah.
I'm done. This is too hard.
It's
Yeah.
literally a life lesson. I'm reading the book The E-Myth right now by Michael Gerber, and it's one of the very first values is when you're in that moment, do exactly what you did.
Yeah.
Stop, pause, reflect on why you're doing what you're doing to get ahead. That's going to
Yeah.
make you the incredible entrepreneur that you aspire to be.
No, it's so important. And one of the biggest things that I do is like if I'm in a situation like that where I'm uncomfortable, things aren't going my way, I usually look back 6 to 8 months and I go, what was I doing 8 months ago?
Right.
And I can absolutely guarantee it wasn't much.
Right.
It wasn't enough, or it wasn't in line with the values, and it wasn't in line with the vision that I wanted to where I want to be. That always happens to me. I'm like, if stuff's on the uptick and I'm like crushing it and running around, everything's going work. I look back 8 months, I was like, I put in the work then.
Yeah.
And if you look at it in these little incremental 6 to 12 month blocks instead of like a whole lifetime, or if you look at it in just this moment, my life's crashing for argument's sake, you're like, you'll never get out of it. But if you actually just look back and be like, oh, the steps that I took back then got me here. Let's just replicate that.
Yeah.
Let's replicate these good actions.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to dive back to something. So you got my brain running around. So in high school, I played the saxophone, played the piano, did that for a number of years. And I can't help but think of all the people who were really talented, but didn't pursue their artistic ways because of what we were speaking about.
Societal
And
norms,
where we're getting to now is like, you're now an artist, you're doing what you want to do, but it was the norms of, no, you got to go to university, you have to have your 10th master's degree, you know? How many people would you say in your space, maybe in conversations, do you know of who have never followed through and could have been incredible people in their industry?
In art, in anything creative, there are hundreds of thousands of people that are incredible. Like incredible artists, incredible actors, musicians. Like it doesn't matter what it is, and especially this creative space.
Yes,
they are absolutely fantastic and never pursued it because it wasn't realistic. You know, it's a crazy thing. A lot of the older generation, our parents and people above that, will say like, "Oh, millennials have it like." I'll say, well, I'll use the word easy because there's so many more options now because of social media, because we see things.
Yes.
Because there are saxophone players today that make millions of dollars on TikTok.
Yes.
There are people that are incredible at dance. There are artists that can do like very creative, different things that are making money just through social media platforms and brand deals and different things like this. Like think back to an artist, back in the day, they can only paint and hope to get in a gallery.
Right.
Now I can do deals with Disney and Adidas, and I can get flown to Australia to do things where back then there was never a thing.
Right.
So it's not that it's easier or harder. Like there's just more there's more opportunity now because we see the opportunities because of social media. So to the question is like there's thousands of kids and people that didn't pursue or didn't even try.
That's
Here's
the thing.
The crazier thing.
Even now with social media, if they're not trying.
Yeah, they're like somebody may have been an incredible pianist and they just didn't even try. Because they're like, well, what am I gonna do with this?
Yeah.
Right.
Right? Like
someone was telling them in their ear,
exactly,
what are
it's not
you
realistic.
doing? Yeah.
Exactly.
Be like your dad. Follow the family, tradition.
Yeah. Or like I played with some baseball players like growing up that were astronomically better than me. Like I mean this astronomically better than me. They went nowhere because there was never any emphasis like, what are you gonna do, make the major leagues? I'm like, no, but I could get an education. I could build better team skills. Like I mean, there's so many things that you can learn from a team sport. But they were programmed to be like, that's not realistic. 1 in a trillion shot. Right. So
yeah, I think through generations we learn ways to strive and we learn ways to move forward that our other generations before us didn't have the ability to.
Yeah.
So they tell you right away what's the safe way.
Yes.
What's the safe thing to do? How can I proceed in life to where you are doing it safely?
Yeah.
As opposed to taking risks.
Yeah.
And I find that entrepreneurs are a different breed.
Yeah.
People in entrepreneurship are a way different breed in relation to risk taking. And I've had people who are entrepreneurs who say there's different levels of risk taking in entrepreneurship as well. There's certain entrepreneurs who are like, I'll take a risk on this, but I won't take a risk on that.
For sure. Yeah, the threshold for risk is definitely higher in entrepreneurship. It comes down to like I always believe it being a numbers game, and I use the term gambling very high level. I don't mean actual physical casino gambling, but the reality of everything that we're doing is a gamble because we can believe in it all we want.
Yes.
And when you're an entrepreneur, you can believe in your product, your vision, your message, your story. But at the end of the day, you're still gambling against the market conditions. You're gambling against society. You're gambling against all these different factors that need to literally fall in place like a roulette ball falling in a number. It needs to literally fall in place for it to actually hit.
Right.
Right? If it bounces one number over, you don't hit.
Yes.
So that's how crazy it is being an entrepreneur. It really is related to gambling.
That's the Colonel Sanders example I've shared,
Right.
the founder of Kentucky Fried Chicken, right? He lived in Canada for like 30, 40 years at Dixie Queensway in Mississauga. And he went around, it was like 1,101 different restaurants until that second 1,102 was like, I want your recipe.
Yeah.
But like talk about resilience for a man in his 60s
Crazy.
to start this foundation and this business. Like
Can you
It's
imagine
ongoing.
just like your 300 and some odd school emails.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Right?
ex-
Yeah.
It's just
that's
resilience
it.
to get
Yeah.
the 1,000 no's and one yes, right?
Because you really do need to realize that it just takes one to get the ball rolling. That's really it. And
It's true.
but to get that one is sometimes impossible.
Yes.
Right. And that's a hard thing for us to understand, like a human being who is wired. Think about our schooling system. It's wired for have us in rows to listen to the teacher, to raise our hand when we have to go to the bathroom. Like everything's wired to be like very clean.
There's only one
And
answer.
There's only one answer.
That's right.
You have a
Yeah.
test, it's A or B.
Yeah.
And C's wrong.
Yes.
Like, so there's only two, and that's how we're wired. So to say like, I want to do this crazy, airy fairy, like large project, whatever it may be, is crazy.
Yeah. So let's continue with your progression because I love the story so far. So finance.
Yeah.
You decide to transition in finance.
Yeah. So I came home, and unfortunately there was like, I had nothing on my resume. I worked at like Foot Locker for like a month
Yeah.
because every summer I played baseball.
Right.
So all my friends that were like in regular universities, just like top universities, which are actually better academic universities than I was at,
Mhm.
but they had chances in the summer times to get internships and whatever. They were probably just getting their boss's coffee and stuff, but it was on their resume.
Right.
Of course.
I had nothing.
Yeah.
So I came home with this finance degree from Alabama State University in Montgomery.
Yeehaw.
No one cared. And I was like, well, what am I
How
going
was
to
the
do?
food though?
In Alabama, I love Southern food.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love
Crispy
like
just so
brisket,
good.
Yeah.
ribs, and
Yeah.
like I love barbecue. Like
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm a fat kid at heart.
No, yes, I love it. No, I love the food down south. So I come home and I'm like, well, what am I gonna do? And I didn't have any like connections in finance, or like I didn't know what to do. So I only had like one thing I was decent at that moment, was coaching baseball, because I just played baseball, and I saw there was like this little bit of a gap in Toronto specifically. I was a pitcher, so all my friends down south had like these very detailed pitching coaches growing up. I was like, well, why don't we have that here? So I opened up a pitching school like when I first came home, going back to being an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
But I say this transparently, the root of it was to get in front of more parents. Because if I told enough parents that have a finance degree, one of them is going to have a job opening. I just believe that.
Interesting.
And I ended up but then I started emailing teams, can I coach your team? Or like, they're like, what? Like, no, like, it's okay. We have coaches. Like, it's all good. So then I offered free lessons for the first summer that I came home. And they were like, sure, we'll take free pitching lessons from a Division I player. It sounds
Right.
good. And my whole intention was to get in front of these parents at the end of the practices. I ended up building a whole entire it was called the Top Pitcher. It was like a whole entire program with hundreds of kids that I coached.
Wow.
And I got in front of hundreds and hundreds of parents.
Wow.
And from that, the more and more parents I spoke to, there was a point like 6 months into it, I had a ton of job offers.
Wow.
Like everyone from like a bunch of investment funds to Craft Canada for finance, like a bunch of different really good jobs.
Wow.
And I got to pick. Like it was absolutely crazy. And it was because it really had nothing, and we know this now, everyone knows this now, but like it really doesn't have to do with what's on your resume or what school
No,
you went to. It's your
100%.
person.
Yes.
And I think that what I was able to do was like, okay, yeah, I did go to school, right? I got the degree.
Yeah.
But I think like you can see my work ethic on and off the field. You can see how I'm going to care about what we have to do. And I think that went a longer way. So I ended up taking a job at a real estate investment fund called Romspen. It was they're a high value mortgage lender, and I was on the debt origination team, which was really, really exciting. And it was cool. Everyone always asks me now, you must have hated your job, that's why you quit. I'm like, no, I actually liked it. It was really cool. Like I was, young 20s, working on $100 million land deals and like infrastructure
Wow.
projects. And like,
Imagine.
obviously I wasn't leading the charge, but I was in the rooms, and it was really cool.
Right.
So like I got to really see entrepreneurship at the core. Like these were entrepreneurs coming in for $100 million loans on a project that they thought of in their mind, that they envisioned a 50-story tower on this plot of land because of X, Y, and Z. I was like, whoa, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to be a fly on the wall to something that normal people don't get to be.
Exactly. And then I got to crunch the numbers, see how I made it work.
Right.
And I was like, wait, what? It actually
Even
works.
better.
Yeah. Or this guy's crazy. That does not work. So both ways, and it was really cool to see. And I also got an insight into, because of that world, because of that high net worth world, unknowingly started learning about art. Like a lot of these guys were
Really?
art collectors.
Okay.
Started
That
hearing
makes
about
sense.
it, started
Right.
touching about it. And that was, I loved art for 15 years before that, but it was still like, oh, people collect art?
Yeah.
Interesting. That's cool. Want back in my mind, maybe in the future. So that was my transition into finance. It was like I needed to figure out a way. being resourceful is a key trait to being an entrepreneur. Like the same way I had to be resourceful to get to step A, I needed to be resourceful to get to step B, and I just got to find a way.
Right.
Like I think enough people, if we actually just focused on finding a way for that singular goal, anyone can do anything.
Yeah,
like nothing can stop you.
Pivoting.
Yeah.
Pivot.
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 You ever watch Friends?
No, it's
No.
Seinfeld person? Come on, somebody.
I don't watch much TV. I'm sorry.
That's
I
our
watched a
battle.
little bit of Seinfeld.
I'll just
growing
send you
up.
all these clips.
That's
later.
I'm
okay.
sorry.
That's-
Yeah.
We're good. We're good. We're
I'm
good.
like bad with TV. I'm
Yeah,
like the worst. I don't watch much
Same,
TV.
don't watch TV.
This is old, like 90s
Yeah,
and
yeah.
80s
No,
stuff.
I mean, these are incredibly classic shows.
Oh,
that-
yeah.
that everybody. Yeah, I'm
We have
just-
the
I'm
battle.
just
It's
bad.
like
I'm just bad
Seinfeld's
with this
one.
stuff. Yeah, I'm bad with this stuff.
So take
go
us
ahead.
from that. Now, so you're starting to meet these fluent individuals. They're in this level. They're investing. They're developing. What's the next chapter?
So I'm in finance and I'm working in it. And I told her briefly before that transition of when my uncle passed away, I came home and I got all of his old art, his poetry.
Mhm.
So I was still living at home at the time. My parents had this little greenhouse when my grandparents were alive. It was a very, very small, like 100 square foot greenhouse, just with dirt and plants. And I started painting in my bedroom just for fun. And then I was like, well, I'm making a mess. So let me just go into this greenhouse. No one's using it anymore. And I think like looking at my uncle's old paintings, his poetry stuff, it started to inspire me. And every night and weekend I started painting. There was no intention with it. Like there was no time in which at that early stages where I was like, I'm going to quit my job and become an artist. It was just like, I just feel like painting. I just like this.
Yeah.
And I didn't have money at the time to like buy a lot of canvases. So I would like buy one canvas, paint it over white, paint another one, paint it over white, paint another one. I was
wow.
just practicing.
Oh.
And I didn't even know what I was practicing for. I was just doing it. And so the transition for me was like literally, a couple times a week, then every night of the week, then mornings,
Right.
then every weekend, I was just painting. So like if I wasn't at work and I was working at a finance job, so those long hours,
Yeah.
then I would spend time with my girlfriend, my wife now, but my girlfriend at the time and my parents. Then I would paint. It's like till 2, 3 in the morning every night.
Wow.
And what started happening was like as I started to do more and more of it, I started hosting these like little art shows. Like literally, I would rent out in like a condo party room,
Right.
like I rent out a little room somewhere and just showcase some of the artwork that I was working. Literally, my aunts and uncles, family and friends. Like no one was coming to see my art
Sure.
or buy my art.
But you're going through this process. This is what people don't get. You're
Yeah.
going through the process of facilitating this, orchestrating this, getting everyone together.
Yep.
It does play value and dividends later,
It's crazy.
right?
The photos from those events are what got me to where I'm at today. Because like it showed they showed history of like
Interest.
attempt.
Yes.
It showed trial. It showed people coming out to see my art. Who cares that it was my aunt? No one knows.
Yeah.
It was like it
100%.
showed people in front of my art engaged, talking about it.
Right.
And it also gave me feedback to like what could work. What do I like doing? It took a lot of reps in that, but it was in very, very, very important lessons. So I keep doing this, and then all of a sudden I'm like, well, this reach out concept that I used to get to college, that I used to get to finance, I was like, why don't I start reaching out to like architects, interior designers, like anyone that would listen? And small unpaid opportunities started to come up.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely not enough to like quit my job,
Right.
but they were substantial enough that they were exciting. And there was like, hey, do a little mural over here. Hey, like we would love your art in this restaurant, like whatever it may be, small opportunities. And specifically, there was this opportunity through this architecture firm in New York. They're Toronto based, but they had this project that was going to New York, and my style art fit really well.
Mm-hmm.
And they said to me like, they need you to do a mural here. I was like, wow, that sounds great.
Yeah.
But it was gonna be like a week-long mural. And I had just reserved time off for my honeymoon coming up. And I remember going to my boss, this was a couple months before my wedding, and I remember going to my boss and saying, you know what, I gotta go do this. I actually had the time off. And he was a great guy, so I'm not talking bad about him, but I had the time off. I'm gonna take a week off and go to New York to do an art mural. And he's like, art? He's like, you're not an artist. Looking back, he wasn't
Just like
being
that.
mean. He wasn't
like
like,
that, yeah.
he was just being honest. He's like, what are you talking about?
Didn't know your
you're not
interest,
gonna,
your
like-
passion.
Yeah, you're not gonna go do a mural. And I was like, damn, he's right. Like, what am I even thinking? Like, I'm gonna like leave Toronto for a week to go do an art mural for like
Yes, you are.
$1,000 when
Yeah.
I'm making a good salary. This
Yeah.
is crazy.
Right.
So I turned it down.
No way.
Yeah, I turned it down. So 2 months later, that same architect calls me and he goes, hey, listen, that project's opening up next week. And the artist that we hired flopped on us. Like, long story, they need you to do this. And it was a Wednesday night. It was the night that I closed on my first house, that townhouse. it was the week before my wedding. So like the full next week was my wedding. And I was like, I'll be in New York tomorrow.
Wow.
I went to my boss I'll be in New York on Friday. I went to my boss on Thursday. I said, I'm so sorry, but I am pursuing art full time. And he was extremely supportive because I went all in. And when you go, and as we know, when you go all in on something, everyone around you starts believing it.
Yes.
When you're like half-assed, you're like, I don't know this. No, you have to go absolutely all in on your goals for everyone else around you to start believing in that. And that's what happened with me. I said, I'm doing this. And literally the next morning I was in New York, and
Wow.
I've never looked back. So, but it was actually crazy timing because it was a week for my wedding, and
Yeah.
like the night it was the worst timing in the world. That's
Sorry,
why
honey,
you never.
I gotta leave.
Yeah, I'm so grateful. Like, my wife is so supportive. She's fantastic, and I mean that's why we've been together for so many years. But she's like, of course, let's do this. And then but yeah, that was the transition into art. It was like that was a tipping point. But there was like there was 5 years of me painting where like no one really cared or knew. And I was just like, but I was like you mentioned, like I was building that like the formative blocks to get me to where I was.
I wanted to. Sorry,
I was gonna say basically you were the iceberg. You know, they always say that the top part's the least visible, but you just kept showing it for that 5-year period. But underneath was just this power waiting to be unleashed, and it took that. Hey, we're calling you again. Get to New York, and you're like, that's it. Yeah, that's it.
Something you told us before we started recording, but you're colorblind.
Yes.
I want to, and I think our listeners are just gonna die from hearing this.
Yeah. So I knew at like 3 years old I was gonna be an artist, so I set it up with my mom. No, I'm just joking. It's so funny.
You said in the womb you started this? What?
Years later, everyone asked me like, are you like lying about the colorblind thing? I'm like, yeah. When I was a little boy, I set this up for a marketing ploy.
Right?
Like, it's so funny. But
we were eyeballing my shoes in studio, so they're green. We were talking
I
about
was like,
this.
those. I'm like, those are gray, and they're like, no, they're green. I'm like, okay, I give up. I'm not gonna win this fight. But yeah, being colorblind, so like I don't see shades. So you know, blue and purple look exactly the same. Green and brown look exactly the same. Green and yellow look the same. Red and brown look the same. So when colors are beside each other, they look the same. And it was part of those 5 years that I was working in the greenhouse by myself. A lot of paintings looked horrible. And I mean this. The reason was I didn't see color transitioning. And I was doing like very classical art things where like you mix paint and you put it down, you work relatively fast. And I would be like, I could read. So I read the color, it says blue. I put the blue here. And I read this says yellow. Okay, cool. I paint. And all of a sudden the canvas is muddy brown. I did not see that transition happen. I don't see muddy brown. So I would do the canvas and be like, oh, this beautiful face or whatever it is. And my wife will come in. She'll be like, did you mean to make this all like brown? I'm like, no, it's blue and yellow. She's like, no, it's all ugly brown. I'm like, oh wait, what? Like, and I wouldn't see transitions.
Wow.
So it was very pivotal for me because I was able to say, I had to work on a new style of painting, which is like it's a longer drying process. So pretty much the only difference that I have to do now from like someone else paints who's not colorblind is every time I add a color, it has to fully dry and cure. I can't work fast. I can't blend colors. It's just like very elementary in the sense of like add your blue, let it dry.
Right.
Add your yellow, let it dry. And that's what gave when you see my paintings in person, like they're very thick and rich in texture is because of that. Is like there's so many layers that go into my artwork and it's also part of my story. And it helped a lot. I think it helped.
Yeah.
Like genuinely, which could have been something like that made me not want to paint growing up.
Right.
Was something that made my art so distinctive.
I love your art.
Thank you.
Yeah, your art is incredible. And for our viewers, we'll put a link to your site and everything so that people can see it. It's gorgeous.
Thank you.
It's gorgeous. And it's I don't know if the word simplistic is doing it justice, but the fact that it's based on the heart and just the color. Yeah. And then to find out that you're colorblind and just the richness of it.
I think that blew our minds. We're like, what?
Awesome to see.
Basically, we're a giant blob of gray shade here in the studio, you know, based on the green and the gray. Yeah.
How would you describe your art to someone who hasn't seen it before?
Yeah, it's like the real definition is like mixed media contemporary. It's like very modern in its tones. There used to be, it's a little bit not anymore, but like there used to be like some street elements to it because I use a little bit of spray paint and drips. But overall, it's like very modern, but recognizable imagery.
Right.
Even like now I've transitioned to, I'd say 80% of my paintings are mainly based around like my heart motif, which is something that I've just been known for around the world at this point. But it didn't always start that way. Like I tried so many different things. I used a lot of pop culture, a lot of references, a lot of text, which is probably based off of my uncle's old poetry that inspired me. So I write my own poetry now
Wow.
inside of it. But it's all very uplifting, bright, colorful, like inspirational, original art is what I try to do.
Right. What's been your pinnacle moment so far? And you obviously haven't reached it yet.
Yeah.
But what is your pinnacle moment in relation to art?
Yeah.
What, when you look back, it was like, other than the first one, what has been your favorite?
When I think about like different pinnacles and things like that, like I often look back to saying like all these different peaks have created the pinnacle. I don't think there's been so many incredible different things that I've done that I've been inspired by, whether it's opening my first gallery in Yorkdale Shopping Center, whether it was like opening the gallery in Miami or doing a show in Australia, or even doing things with celebrities has been really cool, like Post Malone and Drake and Lil Wayne and Demi Lovato and like a bunch of Justin Bieber, like really fun, interesting stuff. And every single time I did one of those things, I was like, that was the thing.
Yeah.
Like I did a big show. Do you guys know Grant Cardone?
Yes.
So last Art Basel, which is a big event in December, we did a big show together, like 10 pieces for 10X, like all big show with him. I was like, that's going to be a thing. And although it was fantastic and I'm so grateful, when I look back at all of these events, I was like, well, all of them added to the pinnacle. And I don't think there's been one singular tipping point. There's just been a lot of different little ones,
Right.
and that have led to like one decently sized one.
Yeah.
So there's just been a lot of little ones,
Right.
Yeah, and I say little as a figure of speech because
Sure.
I really am so grateful for how big they are to me. I have one coming up. This is the first time I'm saying it. No one knows this, but I'm opening up a gallery in the airport.
No way.
In Pearson, which is gonna be really cool.
Wow.
Yeah, I've not told anybody that, so there you
Congrats.
go. It's dropping here first.
Amazing.
Yeah,
thank
so
you.
in Terminal 1 in Departures, it's going to be a big gallery, vinyl wrap. We're going to have like hearts all over the floor in the airport. It's going to be really cool. Yeah. So
That's
I'm
awesome.
very, very excited about that. So like that's another big one, right? But
Yeah.
it's just like another little tip.
Yeah.
So what is next for Anthony?
Yeah.
Where's that vision going?
So it's different, unique things like this. Being an entrepreneur is a blessing and a curse for a couple different reasons. I have tried so many different things in this journey. And although like art and canvases is the main source, the main driver for me, I've opened up jewelry lines and clothing lines and restaurants and like so many different things. And I always come back to art, and you realize whether those failed or succeeded, if you're not giving it 100%, it will fail. And what ends up happening, even if I am giving something else 100%, you look back and there was a couple times where I'm like, I didn't paint for 6 months, or I only did customs for 6 months. I'm like, people would ask me, where's your art? I'm like, I'm actually working on these 4 other projects. So what's next for me is really refocusing, like the later half of this year, 2023. We're in 2023.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a blur. I don't.
I actually
Don't ask me
genuinely
what the date is.
I
or
was
the month,
genuinely
but
like, we might not be in 2023. In 2023, the last half
tricks.
of this year, my real focus is to refocus on the actual canvas side of everything for me. I believe more opportunities are coming for me that way, instead of me trying to like develop businesses and brands and all this crazy stuff. I'm like, why don't I just refocus on the canvas, and then that's going to lead to opportunities like
Follow your heart.
exactly, leading to
Literally.
opening up. Because I really believe that. Like when you follow
that's
your heart,
true.
incredible things happen. And like my heart has always led me back to the canvas. And by doing that, by making more art, when a client asks me, what do you have available? This is what I have available. Or when a gallery, I did a show a couple months ago in Australia. And the only reason I was able to do that show, that it was such a quick turnaround. They were like, hey, we have an opening of this like slot in our gallery in like I think it was like 2 weeks. And we want like 20 paintings. I happen to have like 20 paintings that were in my inventory. If I wasn't making inventory, I physically would not have done that show.
Right.
And that show ended up becoming a great success, and like doing a ton of work in Australia now. But it was only because I had it.
Right.
So I look back to all these times and I was like, it's like a clothing line having inventory. Like if somebody tries to buy your t-shirt and you don't have any, like, why do you have a clothing line? So that's what I'm really focused on moving forward. And then just trying to get healthy. Like, I mean, that's really it. Because I really believe, but like I really, I'm finally refocused on that, because I really believe it's a pivotal and important aspect to doing everything.
Yes.
You know, morning workouts and just eating a little better. And you don't have to be
Yes.
perfect.
No.
Like, we're not going to be perfect.
No,
I don't
no.
want to be, actually.
No.
Like, there's so many times where I went on like these little rants of like eating 100% clean and all the fun stuff and not drinking and not this, that, and the other. I was like, well, I don't mind a cigar and a glass of scotch on a Friday night
Sure.
with like
You
two
have
of
the
my
three of
friends.
us here.
Yeah, as
anytime.
long as you're not doing it every night.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's all moderation to everything, but like I think we can all live a healthier lifestyle overall. So that's my goal, and I think that'll translate into my work.
Yeah. I definitely see the correlation to
For sure.
being healthy and it actually helping you out in your business because your mind is clear.
Yeah.
You don't hit those lulls during the day of
Yes.
being a slug and couch potato, right?
Yeah.
It helps.
And also like the wins, like, you know, just winning, working out to me, or like just training as a whole, is taught me that like I can actually win a little part of my day.
Yes.
Everything around me could be crashing.
Yes.
Like, everything could be going wrong
100%.
and nothing could be going my way. But I worked out that morning.
Yes.
I got up at 4:30 in the morning. I went to the gym. I lifted something heavy. I
100%.
moved through something that I didn't want to do. And that was a win.
Yeah.
And you can't take that away from me.
You
That's
have
right.
to
No
put
one
yourself
can.
first.
That's
You
right.
have to do that in order to be there for yourself, in
Yes.
order to be present for other people.
Yes.
Right. And that's the number one thing we see
There's
as an
there's this
entrepreneur.
concept that a mentor of mine, he's an incredible guy, Mark Evans, he talked about, was filling your own cup up first. When you
100%.
fill up your coffee cup, then it pours over to everyone around you. But
Yeah.
if your cup isn't full, you physically can't.
Right.
So like you need to have your cup full, and that goes to health, that goes to wealth, that goes to
Yes.
your family, everything. Fill it up and then let it pour. And look,
Yep.
watch how everyone around you is living a better life as well.
Yeah. Definitely.
Well, Anthony, where can our guests and followers and viewers find you?
Yeah.
And go from there. If you have any socials, websites, whatever you'd like to
For
share
sure.
with us.
Yeah. So right now I have a current artwork on display in Yorkville Village, if you're based in Toronto, and then starting October 1st, we'll be in Terminal 1 at the airport.
So
And
exciting.
then online, Ricciardi Paints, like my last name, Paints, on all socials and my website, and it's all ricciardipaints.com or at Ricciardi Paints.
That's awesome.
Wonderful.
Awesome. Well, once again, we've had a successful show.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Wonderful guests. Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much for coming.
So
We
grateful.
appreciate it.
Thanks for coming, Anthony.
If you haven't subscribed to us yet, please do so. Watch us, listen to us,
Absolutely.
make some waves. We'd like to thank Perception Studio. If you are looking to film a podcast or any kind of filming or audio or anything, come down to Perception Studio.
And remember, as always, to dream bigger, make waves, and take action in life. And we'll talk to you on our next episode.
Love it. Thank you.
Thank you.